Okay, come on. Today we are going to discuss the A2 essays, 25 marks essay. We call it, I call it efficiency essays, okay? And this efficiency essays is considered one of the most common types of essay questions being asked in A2 exam. And it is also considered one of the most popular questions. Most of the students, they like efficiency essay. Okay, now before we start, I will show you some, I'll look at the A2 essay compilation. I'll show you a few 25 marks essay, and from the 25 marks essay, we will identify some keyword whereby each time when you see this kind of keyword, you will need to know, like, okay, this keyword will want you to include this part of the information, and this keyword will want you to include this type of information, and etc. Yeah. So first of all, we'll be looking at 2016-ON41, 2016-ON42. Okay, let's look at these two questions first. Yeah. First of all, we will see from the questions, there will be one important keyword where we call it allocate resources efficiently or effectively, okay? So that is the first keyword. And then we look at the second questions, yeah? So it has been said that the aim of allocation resources should be achieve the greatest happiness. So something like effective and efficient. And now, secondly, you will see another keyword whereby they will give you an idea whereby the market, the free market, or the price mechanism. So the second keyword here, you can see this part they call, like, they give it invisible hand or free market. And then the second questions, they didn't really discuss whether it is free market or it is a mixed economy or whatever. Then let's move on. We look at other essay questions. Okay. Now, these essay questions, again, they show you the first keyword, efficient allocation of resources. And then they say, like, many economies, they are facing pressure, they are facing problem, difficulty in allocation of resources, okay? But they didn't mention what kind of economic system, whether it is market economy, whether it is a mixed economy. Okay, moving on. And this question is more general. They just mentioned economic efficiency, and still we have the word efficiency here. And then they offer like one specific types of economic system, which is the market economy. And we'll move on to the last example, yeah? Again, they mention about types of economic system, free market. And another keyword, as you can see, is efficient use of resources. Now, generally, the efficiency question is asking you whether the market economy or the price mechanism or the free market economy or the private sector, it is the most, leaving the allocation of resources to this kind of private sector is the most efficient way to achieve allocation, like to achieve the best use of resources. And efficiency 25 marks essay, I will break it down to 4 parts. And this video will consist of part 1 and part 2. And this efficiency essay, if you look at A2 syllabus, it consists of, like, it is a combinations of a few chapters, yeah? So we will, like, need the knowledge from chapter 1, which is efficiency chapter. We will need some knowledge of chapter like 2.4, which is the market structure chapter. At least you need to know about perfect competition and monopoly. And then it consists of chapter 3.1 and 3.3, which is about market failures and government's intervention to correct market failure. And the last part, it could be government's failure. So this 25 marks efficiency essay comprises of these four chapters information. And what we need to do now, or what we need to do today, is how to put all four chapters information together in order to answer this efficiency essay. So let's start. Now, in most of the question I show you just now, they have one keyword: efficient use of resources, or effective use of resources, allocating resources efficiently. So when you see the word efficient or whatever, you need to tell the examiner what is meant by efficiency. Therefore, our part one will always start with explaining to examiner what is meant by efficiency. Okay. Now, generally, we need to discuss two main types of efficiency, which is allocative and productive efficiency. However, I would like to just tell you whereby generally we can categorize efficiency under two different categories. Yeah. So efficiency. The first category, we call it static efficiency. Second category, we call it dynamic efficiency. Static efficiency are those efficiency that can be achieved at a point of time. Meaning that I can, based on your current situation, I can base on your firm's current condition, or I can base on the economy current situation to confirm that whether you have achieved this or you have achieved that kind of efficiency. So there are two efficiency under this. The first one is productive efficiency, PE. The second one is allocative efficiency, which we are going to discuss in detail later. Whereby dynamic efficiency, you cannot track at this point of time, because dynamic efficiency is achieved over time. Therefore, you will need to observe a period of time, or you will need to compare 2020 compared to 2010, whether I have achieved this type of efficiency or not. Whereby under dynamic efficiency, it is only dynamic efficiency itself. And dynamic efficiency is easily understandable. In order to achieve dynamic efficiency, we will need to spend on innovation, and you will need to spend on research and development in order to achieve dynamic efficiency. Ultimately, dynamic efficiency is hoping to increase the country's productive capacity, and hoping to achieve a goal of sustainable development, so that our current development wouldn't deter the potential of future development. So that is what we call dynamic efficiency. However, most of the time in our essay, we are not expect to discuss so much on dynamic efficiency. But I always encourage you to include dynamic efficiency when you are introducing different types of efficiency to the examiner or in your answer. Why is it so? I will tell you later. So now, we don't really need to offer any diagram for dynamic efficiency, but then if you look at this kind of context, you should know that for dynamic efficiency is either your PPC curve shifting outward, or either your long run aggregate supply curve shifting rightwards, which means your productive capacity has increased. Okay, now let's go in depth to discuss what is meant by productive efficiency and what is meant by allocative efficiency. Yeah, so this is part one. Okay, productive efficiency. Now, in terms of the analysis of productive efficiency and allocative efficiency, we can analyze them from different perspectives, from the country's perspective and also from the firm's perspective. Okay, so let's go for the economy's or the country's perspective. Yeah. in terms of economy or that particular country, the country is said to have achieved productive efficiency, okay, when they produce on its PPC. So the country is said to have achieved productive efficiency when the country is now producing on its PPC. So no matter you are point A, point B, or point C, okay, as long as you produce on your PPC, you are fully utilizing your resources, then PE is achieved. So in other words, you are fully utilizing your resources. All your factors of endowment are being utilized. Likewise, when you are here, then we call it the economy is productively inefficient because you aren't fully utilizing your resources. So just that simple from the economy point of view. And next, from the firm's point of view, from the firm's perspective, the firms is said to have achieved productive efficiency if they produce at the least cost level of output. So the firm is said to have achieved productive efficiency when they are producing at an output level which they can drive their average cost to the lowest possible. So if you look at the diagram, okay, regardless this is a long run AC or short run AC, of course for long run AC there will be even more interesting discussion. So cost, output. Then when firms are producing at this point, this is what we call optimum level of output. Then firms has achieved productive efficiency. So Q, optimum. If they produce at here, they have achieved PE. However, if firms are currently producing at Q1, so they are not achieving PE. Why? Because they haven't pushed their production to the level of output where they can produce at the least cost. And when they are not producing at the lowest AC, they still have, we call it excess capacity available. In short, they haven't fully utilized their available resources. Okay, now then let's compare. Yeah? In that case, at Q1 at point A, okay, and if we compare at Q1 at point B, so if we are to compare point A and point B, okay, point A shows the lowest cost firms can achieve if they produce at Q1. So firm A is showing that that is the lowest cost that firm A can obtain if they produce at Q1. However, if now firm A is producing at Q1, but they are producing at point B, this is what we call X inefficiency. Okay, because they are not producing at the lowest possible cost. Which means even though you are producing at Q1, actually you have the potential to drive your cost to A, but then you are not doing it. You are now allowing your cost to be at B. So in this case, you are said to have experienced something called X inefficiency, or another word we call it organizational slack. and it is all in the ASA compilation or the ASA guide, yeah. So which is like you can refer later. Okay, now moving on. When you are like experiencing X inefficiency, meaning that like you are not very efficient, there are two main reasons for X inefficiency to be experienced. First of all, maybe the firms is a monopoly. When the firms is a monopoly, they really have no incentive to keep their cost low, because no matter what's their cost, they can just push the extra cost to the consumer because they are the sole seller. Secondly, maybe because this is a state-owned enterprises. For a state-owned enterprises, their priority is social welfare, their priority is employment, so their priority is not efficiency. So instead of like cutting down the number of employment in order to minimize cost, the government owned enterprises would rather to employ more people so that to lower the level of unemployment in the country. So therefore, that is what we call X inefficiency. Okay. Now moving on, that's the part for productive efficiency in the economy's perspective and also in the firm's perspective. Then we move on to allocative efficiency. Now, when it comes to the discussion of allocative efficiency, the general explanation for allocative efficiency is when the economy or the firms, they are producing at the right amount. When they are producing at the right amount, when they are producing at the right quantity, they are satisfying the most wants. Okay, and more like in that, when they are producing at the level which can maximize welfare, okay, then allocative efficiency is achieved. So basically, when allocative efficiency is achieved, there will be no over or under production because you are producing at the right quantity. Therefore, you wouldn't face shortage and surplus of output. And when you are maximizing welfare, there will be no welfare loss, or in other words, we call it dead weight loss. All the potential welfare that can be gained in terms of consumer surplus and producer surplus, you have gained it. So that is the general concepts or understanding about allocative efficiency. Now, moving on, for allocative efficiency, from the economy's point of view, allocative efficiency is achieved when you produce at the point where marginal social cost equals marginal social benefit. In our previous lesson and previous discussion, we mentioned that when marginal cost equals marginal social benefit, what will happen is our marginal welfare is zero, and therefore your total welfare is maximized. Okay, so when marginal is zero, total is maximized. This is the most important relationship in A2 syllabus that I keep mentioning. Then if you want to offer a diagram for allocative efficiency, it is very simple. You just need to draw the demand and supply diagram like what we have learned previously. Okay, the demand curve representing the benefit curve, marginal social benefit, supply curve representing cost curve, marginal social cost, and therefore like this part you can put P and Q, you can put cost and benefit also. Okay, now this is the level where MSC equals MSB, and we call it the socially optimum level of output. So I put it QSO, socially optimum. And let's look at this here. Let's compare. If you are now producing at this Q, at Q1, MSB is greater than MSC, meaning that the extra benefit brought by this particular unit of goods is higher than the extra cost incurred by offering this particular unit of good. And therefore, it tells us where you can still continue with the production in order to gain higher welfare or higher surplus. So how to detect it? Okay, you see, when you are now at socially optimum level of output, this will be the market price. And back in AS, we learned consumer and producer surplus. So when you are now producing a QSO, you can see the amount of consumer surplus that you are gaining is the whole triangle. This is the producer surplus, and on top is your consumer surplus. However, if you stop your production at Q1, the amount of consumer surplus that you gain and producer surplus that you gain, assuming the price is still at PM, is only the yellow shaded area. Okay, so assuming the price is at PM, yeah, still. And in this case, which means you didn't produce enough, you still have chances to increase your production in order to gain more welfare. And this part is the welfare that is lost. We call it the dead weight loss, which means supposedly if you increase your output, you will be able to capture this much of consumer surplus. But then because you stopped at Q1, you didn't manage to capture it. Therefore, Q1 is a level of output which you didn't produce enough. We call it underproduction. Okay, likewise, if now you produce at Q2, okay, the extra benefit to the economy is now less than the extra cost incurred. So you will lead to consumer surplus and producer surplus deficit, which means it's a negative consumer surplus and negative producer surplus if assuming the market price is still at PM. So it's still at PM. This is negative producer surplus, and then this is negative consumer surplus, because consumers are only willing to pay this much, but then they are asked to pay this much. And again, this part is also considered a dead weight loss. And if the economy is producing at this Q2, we call it the overproduction. They have produced too much. So that is how we explain the economy is achieving allocative efficiency or not. Okay. Now, when it comes to the firm's perspective, when it comes to the analyzing AE from the firm's condition, firms is said to have achieved allocative efficiency when they produce at a level where P equals MC. So you can see it is again MC. Okay. Now, if you are to use this, to use diagram, it's the same diagram. It's just that we will alter the label a little bit. Okay. So now it's talking about firms, one particular product. So the supply curve, instead of MSC, we put it as MC. And then the demand curve. Remember, the demand curve reflects your MU, and MU will reflect the price that consumers are willing to pay. And back in market structure, demand curve is also your AR curve, is also your price curve, okay? So that is all like based on the marginal utility concept, yeah? So you see, P equals MC, it is here. Optimum level of output. Okay, because at optimum level of output, when P equals to MC, actually consumer surplus is maximized. You satisfied the most ones. So P equals MC. And again, as for this part, it is an area where your P is greater than MC, meaning that what consumers are willing to pay is higher than the additional costs incurred to produce that particular product. Actually, if you don't mind, you produce extra, you will benefit even more, you will satisfy even more wants. Okay. Likewise, at this area, your P is now lower than additional cost of producing it. So because when you are producing too much of a thing, when consumers are consuming too much of a good, diminishing marginal utility sets in. Therefore, consumers are now willing to pay a lower price for extra amount of that particular product. And therefore, if again, assuming if consumers are forced to pay at the market price, the equilibrium, okay, and they will definitely lead to negative consumer surplus. So that is how it works for allocative efficiency. And that is how it works like when we are trying to analyze whether firms is achieving allocative efficiency or not. Now guys, in the reality, later on, we are going to discuss about how the market fail or market failure. In the reality, most of the time, allocative efficiency is not achieved. Okay, in most cases. How to show it and under what kind of situation it will be achieved, we are going to discuss about it in the following part, which is the second part of this 25 marks essay. So now, as a short conclusion, okay, we discuss about what is meant by productive efficiency in terms of the economy and firms aspect. We discuss what is meant by allocative efficiency in terms of firms and the economy aspect. Okay, so that is our part one for our 25 marks essay, explaining to the examiner what is meant by efficiency. Then we are going to continue to part two. Okay, now, after we discuss part one, okay, what are the types of efficiency? We discuss what is meant by productive efficiency, what is meant by allocative efficiency, and also what is meant by dynamic efficiency. And just to recap, dynamic efficiency is rather short. It's just some extra efficiency that we offer so that later on our discussion can be more rich or can be we can have more branches for our discussion. Okay, now, in overall, efficiency essay is asking about whether efficiency can be achieved in free market or by market forces or by private sector, right? So part one, we done. Part two, we need to explain, we need to offer or discuss, yes, efficiency can be achieved by free market under what kind of situation? No, efficiency can't be achieved in free market under what kind of situation? Econs is basically a social science subject. For a social science subject, we need to train you to evaluate the condition instead of telling me one extreme answer or one absolute answer. So let's move on to part two. Now, part two, as mentioned just now, can efficiency be achieved in in any market structure or in any occasion or any situation? Yes, efficiency can be achieved in perfect competition market. So now guys, because previously we learned what is meant by perfect competition market, therefore the first thing you need to define what is meant by perfect competition market. As mentioned before, perfect competition market is a market structure where no one can set prices. Okay, all prices are determined by price mechanism or the market forces, and therefore all firms basically are price taker. So in this case, after you define the general explanation of perfect competition, you need to offer a few features of perfect competition or a few assumptions of perfect competition or characteristic, whereby the first and the most important characteristic, okay, all products are said to be homogeneous or identical in the eyes of consumers. So you need to explain. Secondly, they assume perfect knowledge, which means both consumers and producers, they possess same level of information. They have symmetric information. When they have the same information, no one can actually exploit another person. So consumers will know like what are the recipe, what are the ingredients used, and producers will know what other firms are doing. Okay, basically informations are like availability like of information is there and for all. Okay, and lastly, perfect competition market is a market with no barriers of entry and exit, meaning that any new firms can enter the market anytime and they can leave the market anytime. And because of the barriers of entry and exit condition, because of no barriers of entry and exit, in the long run, okay, all firms in PC will only earn normal profit, which means it's just a break even in the long run. So now let's draw the diagram for perfect competition firms. And then after that, based on the diagram, we find out whether like how perfect competition firms can achieve efficiency. Yeah. Okay. First of all, I mentioned where when we are drawing a perfect competition diagram, we always need to show the market forces diagram. Because the market demand and supply is the determinant for price. So we need to label this is the market diagram, and we need to identify whereby this is the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity in the market. And next, we are showing firms diagram. So let's say this is firm A. Okay, that's why like this is the informations that we learned in chapter 2.4, which is the market structure. Okay, now we need to show that firms are basically price taker. They will sell all their product at the same price. Therefore, this horizontal line is at the same time the AR for perfect competition firms, MR, and also the demand curve, okay, perfectly elastic demand. And also this is the price curve just now. Okay, now, after we put the AR and MR curve, the second step, we will put the MC curve. And we assume all firms are short-run profit maximizer. Therefore, they will produce at a point where MC equals MR. Okay, assuming all firms are short-run profit maximizer. Short-run profit maximizer. So they produce at MC equals MR. So which means they produce at Q to maximize their total profit. And lastly, just now we mentioned where in the long run, because of the nature of no barriers of entry and exit, in the long run, perfect competition firms can only achieve normal profit, which means at Q, AC equals AR. The lowest point of AC must be cut, must intersect with MC. So now guys, moving on, we need to check whether perfect competition firms achieve this kind of efficiency or not. So we check based on firms equilibrium, which means at the point level of output where firms settle at. So at Q, okay, Q is the lowest point of AC. Therefore, from here, we can say where perfect competition firm has achieved productive efficiency because perfect competition firm produce at the lowest AC point of output. Secondly, at Q, it is the point where P intersect with MC, which means from here we can tell where perfect competition firms is meeting the conditions of achieving allocative efficiency, which means they produce at P equals MC. Lastly, when it comes to dynamic efficiency discussion, this is why I include dynamic efficiency at first. Perfect competition firms, they are very small. They can't achieve dynamic efficiency because they only earn normal profit. When they earn just a normal profit, basically they have no extra funds available to finance research and development. Okay, so that's the key. And that's one of the weakness of perfect competition market as well. So now the first part, proven that this kind of efficiency can be achieved, but then the condition is the market must be perfect. Now, what about the second side of the discussion? We all know that, oops, PE can be achieved, AE can be achieved in perfect competition firms. Unfortunately, guys, perfect competition market is just an economic model. It's just a hypothetical model. And this model doesn't exist in the reality, which means in the reality, you wouldn't see any market being 100% perfect competition. And in the reality, the market is imperfect. That's the problem. Okay. What is meant by imperfect market? Just now we mentioned where perfect market is a market when no one can actually fix prices. Prices will be fixed by only the market forces. But then for imperfect market is a market where firms actually have power to set price. And therefore we call it firms are actually price makers. What makes them being able to set price is because they are selling differentiated product. When you are selling differentiated product, you know your product, okay, and therefore you can set a price for your own product. And market structure like monopolistic, oligopoly, and monopoly, they are all in imperfect market, imperfect competition market. So I'll offer one diagram, which is the monopoly diagram. Okay, first step, label everything. We need to show the AR curve and we label everything. Yeah, AR equals to price equals to demand and MR curve. And next again, we put MC curve in and MC equals MR. This is the profit maximizing level of output. And at this level of output, when it touches your AR curve, that is the price that perfect monopoly charges. And then later on, you include your AC curve. Okay, now at Q, okay, when it touches your price, this is your price of the product, AR of the product. When it touches your AC curve at Q, that is the cost at that level. This is your AC. And this part shows abnormal profit. Okay, the shaded area shows abnormal profit. Okay, now next step we need to track. Okay, whether this firm achieve PE, AE, or DE. First part, in terms of productive efficiency, Q is not the lowest point of AC. Therefore, monopoly firm failed to achieve productive efficiency. Okay. Secondly, in terms of AE, Q is not the level where P equals MC. Therefore, monopoly firm fail to achieve allocative efficiency. Okay, and if we don't look at the diagram, yeah, we can also discuss it from another perspective. Okay, where we know that monopoly, they have no incentive to keep their costs low. As mentioned just now, monopoly is facing the problem of X inefficiency. Okay, And secondly, monopoly has a very obvious behavior. They always try to restrict supply in order to push the price up. So this, when you restrict supply, meaning that you're not producing at the right amount, you are not achieving AE. Okay, that is how it works. Now, and next, guys, when monopoly firms is not achieving AE, it will lead to something called deadweight loss. Deadweight loss is being incurred, okay? Then the area of deadweight loss will be from here compared to the allocative efficiency, the optimum level of output, okay? This triangle is your deadweight loss. And the last part of tracking is we check on dynamic efficiency, okay? Because monopoly firms always earn abnormal profit. Therefore, they can finance research and development, giving them a potential to achieve dynamic efficiency. So this is the comparison, like in the reality, where either we can or we cannot achieve these three types of efficiency. So that's the first part and the second part of the 25 marks efficiency essay. So for part 2, as a short summary, we mentioned that efficiency can be achieved in a very ideal condition, which is when the market is perfectly competitive, okay, with this list of characteristics. And then based on the diagram in application-wise, we based on the perfect competition firms diagram, we check when a perfect competition firm is producing a profit maximizing level of output, which means at Q, okay, whether they manage to achieve AE, PE, and DE or not. So this is the part of checking that I showed. Okay, and however, I would like to break this kind of discussion because I want to tell you whereby in the reality, perfect competition doesn't really exist. Therefore, in the reality, market is basically imperfect. And when market is imperfect, whether this kind of efficiency can be achieved or not, let's check. So when market is imperfect, the diagram will change, whereby your AR and MR is no longer horizontal because firms are now price maker. And therefore, we have a new diagram, which is the monopoly diagram here. And again, monopoly is assumed to be a short-run profit maximizer as well. They produce at a point where MC equals MR. You can see my dot here. Okay, I have a dot here. And then after we have done the diagram, we identify the area of abnormal profit. And the last part is just the checking part based on Q at the short-run profit maximizing level of output Q, whether it is the lowest point of AC. Apparently not. So monopoly doesn't achieve productive efficiency because they don't produce at the lowest AC point. Secondly, Q is also not the point where P equals MC. Therefore, monopoly doesn't meet the condition of allocative efficiency. They didn't achieve allocative efficiency. And other than based on the diagram, I offer you another kind of discussion which you can prove that monopoly didn't manage to achieve these two types of efficiency. As in, they have no incentive to keep their cost low, and they always try to restrict the supply in order to push the price up. Okay, so this is the part. And lastly, I will just give a little bit of credit to monopoly, saying that monopoly has the potential to achieve dynamic efficiency because they are earning abnormal profit. They have more than enough funds to finance research and development if they want. So my keyword is if they want, but how many of them will actually do it? So this is questionable. Okay, now that's all for like part 1 and part 2 of the 25 marks discussion. we still have part 3 and part 4 to go. So let's discuss part 3 and part 4 of the 25 marks later. So see you later.